The first German migrants in South Australia settled by the banks of the Torrens River and named their village Klemzig after a town of the same name in Prussia, now known as Klemzig and now Polish territory. They were old Lutherans who had been seeking to escape religious persecution at home. They considered emigrating to Russia and to the United States, but by chance they encountered a man named George Fife Angus, who was involved in the South Australian Company. Angus thought the religious Germans would make ideal settlers for the nascent colony and financed their trip. They began arriving in November 1838 and rented the land from Angus. They formed one long street with farms formed of strips of land running off from this, divided by paths, the village being surrounded by gum trees. There were about 30 houses made of mud bricks and straw, with thatched roofs. Some humbler buildings were constructed of brushwood. On the land sloping down to the river, the settlers grew vegetables, wheat and barley. The cemetery was closed about 1862 after 23 years of use, with approximately 100 burials having taken place. In 1900, the state government bought up the land and subdivided it into small blocks. Most of the original settlers had moved on to other areas, such as Harndorf and the Barossa Valley, by the 1880s, and only a few ruins of the old days remain, and the old cemetery site. One of the last people to have witnessed the early days of Klemzig would have been Thekla Stroud, who emigrated as a child in 1844 and died in 1931 at the age of 93, having recounted her memories to local historian Reverend John Blackett in 1929. Around 1910, Reverend Blackett had visited the site of the old village and witnessed the last surviving house from that pioneer period. It was in a very dilapidated state. A local showed Blackett to the old cemetery. He described it as a square of land with a few almond trees growing on it, and somewhat overgrown with bushes. 3 or 4 tombstones were standing. When Blackett visited again a few years later, they had all toppled and lay amongst weeds, the cemetery giving an appearance of neglect. In 1924, on yet another visit, he found only 2 tombstones remaining, those of Friedrich Burgelt, a pastor who lived in the village from 1848 to 1856, and Louise Sherman, who died aged 3 on the 11th of May 1853. The tombstone of Anna Cavell was in place in 1954, but may have been a reproduction, as Blackett fails to mention it in the 1920s. On a further visit in 1927, the little cemetery, huddled amidst orangeries and orchards, had had an iron fence placed around it. Remnants of the Lutheran church could still be seen nearby. In August 1936, the centenary year of the state of South Australia, the bronze and granite memorial was unveiled by the governor, an event noted on shortwave radio in Klemzig, Germany. In 1986, the bell tower was added, and in 1988, the large mural and plaques were added to the park.